Countdown. We're all banned because we.
Yeah, a little sexy time here on the first layer. You know, it is February. Why can't we hear Brian? Oh, that's 'cause-
Winnebago's off.
Oh, yeah,
Who
I
wants
turned
to
you
listen
off.
to that guy anyway?
I turned you off.
You missed my joke about freezing off my Winnebago.
Oh, you freezing your Winnebago? Well, you know, I kind of thought, you know, being February, I'd go to YouTube and through their music library and find all the sexy music I could find for February.
That was more like almost like chill step, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's music I listen to often when I'm doing a lot of coding. So there's some cool music on YouTube if you haven't checked
Millennials.
it out.
All right,
that's right.
So,
Back when you were working there, they had you on an assembly line telling you to work for the people. To take down the enemy. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So people are probably wondering who we are and what we're doing here. Well, I'm Richard.
I ask myself that every day.
Me too. I'm Richard. That guy over there, that's Brian Baker. And this is Ask for Help. It's our Sunday live stream where you get to ask your questions live and we answer them live. And if we can't answer them, then we try and do our best to find the information
liver
for
today.
you.
I don't get a voice.
Jared's hanging around, but first of all, I want to jump in. Did you get your button fixed? Because we have a super chat. Super chat.
Here, let me do this.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, there we go. We're oh, hey, that was close. That was really close.
We also have one of these.
Super chat.
There we go. See, I have to bring up the other mic or I have to get really close to this one. Hi, from Freezing Edmonton, just became a member. Yes, NAS.
Hold up. We need our celebration member light. Hang on. 30 seconds.
Oh, he's going to get a celebration member light. Well, speaking of that.
Give me the snips.
No, what is he doing?
Being crazy.
I don't know what he's doing. Oh, he got a big red light. And a cord XTC. You better put that in there too. What is he doing?
It's like one of those
one of these days.
flashing lights like the
New member.
Oh, okay. Well,
member.
let me do this first. We have no friggin' idea what we're doing. So,
Oh, do I have to go hit the button again?
there we go. There we go.
New member.
Rex Walby, thank you very much for the super chat. It is always appreciated. Now, down at the bottom, you're seeing our members from the first layer scroll by, but I have some additions I have to add here. Snapshot FPV, Skip Tarrant, I hope I said that right, Tarrant, Roberta Humberstone, Nas Masalama, I hope I got that right, and Accord XTC. Thank you very much, everybody, for becoming members. It goes to helping out the channel a lot. Now, what are we going to do today? We're going to answer your questions. That's what we're going to do today. What can I use to fill in joints? Depends what type of we're talking about. If you're talking about parts going together, you can use actually a variety of materials. You can use some epoxy putty, like we use here, or you can use some wood filler. I recommend wood filler now over the other filler that I was using because the wood filler doesn't smell. It's easy to use. It cleans up with water. The other filler we were using was glazing spot putty from 3M, which has a really strong acetone smell. So that's something that you might want to consider there, Rex. And I would just use the wood filler. It works great. I used it a couple of times on a few prints.
I like the other one. And
you can't even tell. Jerry likes the other one.
Yeah, basically anything that you can use to fill in a crack works great. Obviously with 3D prints, when you're dealing with microscopic cracks, you can actually thin out a lot of these things. You know, like wood filler, you can add some water to it just to get those finer lines. And then, of course, if you really want to go in thick, you know, we've used Bondo quite a bit because Jess here works in automotive, so getting Bondo is a regular thing. It's really overkill, but if you do want like something that's going to be more solid than your model, you can go that route as well. Yeah,
it's all dependent on what you want to use. I like a variety of different things. I much prefer over anything is a 2-part epoxy putty, because you can smooth that with water, and it cleans up pretty easily, and it will get down. And once it gets down pushed into that crevice that you may have, it's great because then you can sculpt with it as well. So, what's the stuff that we use, Jerry?
The red stuff?
No, the 2-part epoxy. Oh, she doesn't remember the name. It's upstairs.
I don't know
epoxy is fairly readily available. Just be aware there are many different types of 2-part epoxy out there. So the ones, for instance, that are making countertops have a very long curing time. And if you go to any hobby shop, they'll give you a good kickstart because they also have super glues that cure in different time.
Milliput's very good as well.
Milliput is very good, but it has a very limited lifespan of like a year or so.
Yeah,
so
that's
you
true.
have to be working with it often, we've found. Yeah, when it comes to any of those epoxies, I mean, we have done XTC and it does work fairly well, but it's also very highly priced for what it is. I'm pretty sure I haven't found really a resin that worked any less effective that was at least a quarter of the price. So
right.
I mean, if XTC is all you got, do it. Yeah.
I tried my nail polish. I don't know what it's called. When you make your fake fingernails, how they do it. I've tried that, and you cure it with a UV light. That works pretty good too on a resin print.
There you go.
Yeah, because it's the same stuff as what you put in your resin machine, essentially, right? It's just got a different wavelength. I've never actually tried that. The nail hardener or whatever the heck they call it. We'll have to take a look into that sometime.
Works pretty good.
Okay, so our first question in through email. We only got 2 this week, so it'll be pretty quick, and then we can try and get to everybody's questions in the chat today.
Hold up.
What?
I just got a donation. I got a donation for suspenders.
Oh, wow.
Super chat. No, and I'm not going to go and ring the light for that because, I don't need to start a pants fund today. Thank you, 3D Obsession. Yeah. I just replaced my belt this week and my weight has really been fluctuating. That's the hardest thing about staying at home is keeping in shape. And, I mean, as much as punching my machine keeps my upper body in shape, I still got the lazy old legs here, so I gotta go for a walk.
There you go. All right, our first question comes from Corey Taylor, and he says, "Hi, thanks for helping me with the previous problem. I'm now running into a new one." He says, "I have the E3D DIP version 1.1 with the TFT 35 or 35 2.0 version LCD screen, and he's getting an error that says, and it's really, really small here. He basically what's happening is he's not using the right screen, or he hasn't got the right screen because the way that I see it here is it looks like he's using the Zone Star LCD, and he should not be. He should be using a different LCD.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get the notes sent over, guys. So LCDs, what you got to understand is there are 2 types of LCDs on the market. There are the kind that are everything on the display is driven by your main board, and there's ones that run independently and just communicate back to your main board. Now, in this case, I believe this one's tethered, right? Like it is driven by the motherboard.
Yes.
And that's when those settings do matter. Now, if you have one of the ones like the D-Wins, the D-Wins still have some driving coming through. Anything that you see with like touch screens and such where it is possible to have a printer miscommunication, all they're doing is connecting to a serial header on your main board and sending G-code to your machine, similar to how Octoprint would send over USB. So there's a lot of follies with those displays. There's a reason why I'm still sticking with my my RepRap full discounts. It's just because I have more control over it. If the printer mainboard freezes or something, then the screen will freeze. These daisy-chained ones, they do give you more features, but then it's harder to implement things like filament runout and all that. So, just make sure you select the correct LCD for your system. And Marlin will do its best to tell you, hey, that's not a compatible board with your screen. But otherwise, usually you'll get nothing on the screen, even though it's almost correct.
And we've got something here from Henry Stofferman. If I sound like I've got two mics going, I do. So I'm going to go super chat.
Oh, there you go. It's a little bass heavy still, but yeah, that works.
Fine.
Thank you, Henry Stoffern, for the $5. Hope you have your parts for the CR10 as of this week. Big Tree is out of stock right now. Wow, I didn't know that. Now, for those of you who don't know much, is it Chinese Lunar New Year? I always forget.
Yes, it is. It's the Chinese New Year, Year of the Ox. So
yes, so they have like a national week of holidays. So right now, the official holiday date is February 12th here. So if you are buying anything, if you are interfacing with any companies, there's a fair chance you're not going to hear anything back until at least the 15th, which is actually a stat holiday here too, but not there. And they're going to be quite backlogged. So if you ordered anything and it's not currently in motion, you're not going to see anything for the next week. Don't blame them. They're not ignoring you. It is straight out a national week of holidays.
All right. So our last question in our email, we'll just cover it real quick, is this is from Tom J. He says, I was wondering if you could touch on some info for this plugin and if you could give it a bit more info or give us a bit more info on it. He wants to know about the Arc Welder plugin for Cura and Octoprint. Arc Welder, to be perfectly frank, Arc Welder, what it does is it's supposed to smooth out that arc of the print, basically. So a couple of things have to happen. First is your firmware has to be enabled with it first. If not, then it's not going to be any good to you. I've tested it here on the Mingdas, and in the Mingda firmware, it's not turned on. So it doesn't do me any good. It can also be a plug-in to Octoprint if you're using Octoprint. So you really have to make sure that it's turned on. But what it does, it's designed to smooth out your print so you don't get a lot of artifacting is basically what it does. That's the short answer. We are going to do a video on Arc Welder as we go through our next few weeks. We've got 7 weeks more of talking about slicers, and coming up on next Saturday is we're going to be diving into the first one that we looked at, which was matter control, and we're going to show you how to get into matter control, how to set up your printer in matter control, and how to use it. So, and then you guys can make up your minds from there. I've already seen some opinions in the chat from this week's episode where some people love PrusaSlicer, some like Matter Control, some like Idea Maker, some love Cura, some still like Simplify 3D. And not to discount Simplify 3D, but it is a paid program. And all the ones that we demonstrated this week were all free. They're free to download. They're free to use with no watermarking, nothing like that. If you want extra features, a couple of them, you can pay to get the pro versions, but I don't think that's necessary in all cases. All right, let's take a look at what we've got here from Definity. He says, hi guys, great video. I'm a programmer trying to build my first 3D printer. So far, I have some NEMA 17 motors, but I'm stuck trying to find a case. What frame would you recommend? I would recommend that you use an all metal frame. So if you can get yourself some extrusion, 2040 and some 2020, and then build something like you can see behind Brian or like you can see back here. Build a frame like that. It's going to be your most stable frame because it doesn't wobble a lot. And if you can machine the aluminum extrusion properly, you'll have a great solid square frame. And that's the key, is making sure that everything is cut square. You can use a chop saw to cut aluminum extrusion. That's basically all you need to cut it. Or you can cut it by hand.
One thing we were debating doing on a video on, but the fact is it's not relevant in Canada. But if you are an American, take a look into Vention. It's literally Invention without the IN. And what it is, it's a company that allows you to build stuff online through their catalog, and it will give you a BOM, a bill of materials at the end. You can order all the parts cut to size from them, but you can just design everything in your web browser. Now, the reason it's useless for Richard and I is because all of their materials are in imperial. So you're designing in a 25.4 by 25.4 millimeter, which is a 1 inch by 1 inch extrusion. And then trying to adapt that back over to all of our metric equipment that we got is not very fun. But if you are in the route where you don't want to go onto AliExpress and buy a ready-to-go frame where you drop all your own equipment on it, or you don't have a friend who has a 3D printer so you can't print the Hypercube Evo, this is your next easiest step without actually doing all your own machining, because just from experience, and machining it's a very precise process. It's no different than 3D printing. So if you misdrill a hole, your whole frame will be not square anymore. If you go and tap a piece of an aluminum and you bought a cheap tap and it breaks off on the inside, now you're out a bit and potentially the aluminum, unless you want to try to drill it out, which it's not worth your time. Designing your own machine, I know firsthand, it's a trial and error process. And if I can be frank, there's about 4 or 5 different designs out there that are publicly available that will save you a lot of time and are proven already. Yeah,
and there's great designs out there. Depending on how big you want to go too, that's going to be a determining factor of what type of frame size you want to use as well.
There's a lot of mechanical engineering involved. That,
at the end of the day,
I don't have the background in it, so
to keep it simple, I would just go with 2020 and 2040 extrusion and build my frame off of that. And I built quite a few printers from scratch off of that style of material. And it's probably the best way to go.
It is a good way for sure. Yeah, the new hypercubes are using 3030. If you're going like a meter tall, then bare minimum 4040. Just consult someone who knows mechanical, just from my experience.
So the rocket program, he's asking, hey, when you all made that rocket, what filament did you use, or did you use high heat paint? I actually used PETG and ABS for certain parts. I will tell you that the motor mount was all made using PETG, and the actual back end nozzle that screws onto the back, that was all made out of ABS. I haven't had any heat issues, and I didn't use high heat paint. We just used rattle can paint to paint the rockets. None of them deformed. Brian's got one at his house that uses the same motor mount, and the motor mount's never deformed on us at all. So
the only one that I was
pretty happy about that.
Oh, actually, here we go. I do actually still have these photos here. Hang on a second, guys.
Yeah, I can't say so much for the rocket that he built, though.
Oh yeah, I built a tri-motor just for the sake of it, to be honest, because I'm crazy like that. But this was the result. This is just regular PLA. I think this was actually Galaxy PLA from filaments.ca. So what you'll see is definitely there was some blowout on the different motors. You can see this one actually popped its top because there wasn't enough airflow, right? And that's the key. It's about the instantaneous heat. This was also a single extrusion for the most part, if you look at it. So there's not a lot on it. PLA by itself, it's not going to be the right material for this. We do recommend high impact or high temperature PLA. PETG is probably going to be the best. ABS might be fine. Don't go with any kind of HIPs or anything like polystyrenes that are combustible. But just be aware that's, you can see it. Not only did it blow a hole in it, but that instantaneous spurt was enough to melt it or soften it that it could separate. I also did, as you can see, I did have some holes in there, which gave it the melting opportunity. But it, even a flicker at, let's say, 1,000 degrees is going to heat that plastic quick enough to soften it. So, try and avoid using printed materials around any combustibles. And if you're going to, use something more high impact. But for the rest of the rocket, like the nose cones, and even the main body, go with PLA because it's not going to get hot.
And there you go. All right, so I think we got another question coming up. Here we go. A serious question. Oh, no. About PrusaSlicer. With the newest version, I use the CR-10S Pro V2 profile, but it seems to draw the print line right in the middle of my print, like an L shape, then to the side. I've seen that. I've seen that before. It is a line of G-code that is in the start G-code. And what I would do is just go, it'll be punctuated by purge. It'll be a purge line that it's putting down. And you can find that in your G-code, your start G-code. So,
yeah, if I pull this up real quick for you there, if you go into PrusaSlicer under your printer settings for custom G-code, this is where your start G-code is. So right now I've got a G28 to home, then M420, which reloads my mesh just in case if the firmware didn't reload my mesh for my bed leveling. Then I just have it lift. I just have it bump a couple mils of extrusion material and then go for its start. Now, there is a bug with this right now because of how PrusaSlicer kind of heats up your nozzle. But apart from that, it does everything I need to. I just have it move over to the home corner, kick out a bit, bump it to the right, and then go with my skirt. G-code is always, it's per printer really, right? And if you're ever having a hard time with PrusaSlicer's ones, just go back into Cura, copy over what did work for you, and then just paste it right into her. It's the same compatible code.
And that's exactly what I do. All right, I know we've got another question coming in. There it is from Peter Reynolds. He says, so I got a message while printing halted reset thermal runaway bed. How do I reset that? You have to turn off the printer and then turn it back on. If you're getting a thermal runaway on the bed, means there's probably a wire that's crimping somewhere. Because I know that this is a brand new machine, so there's probably a wire crimping somewhere. And Peter, I'll look at that when I come see you tomorrow.
That's if he gets the car out of the back alley.
If you ever get a thermal runaway, always check your wires and check both the hot end and the bed, because sometimes some firmwares it's cryptic and will call. I've seen actually the bed runaway come up as E0 sometimes, and then the extruder is E1. It can get a little confusing. So just follow through your wires, because if you're having a thermal runaway, it's usually not a spontaneous event unless you have built your own firmware and you haven't done your PID tuning, and it's not capable of getting to its temperature under those configurations. But if you're on a stock machine and you see that, you need to check your wires right away, because that will only occur with a physical electrical failure that will only get worse with time. And it's meant to protect you. You know, it's meant to turn off all of your outputs so that it doesn't continuously heat and burn down your house. That's, you know, why every manufacturer needs to have that turned on. And we've seen some manufacturers have forgotten to turn it on throughout time.
That's very true. Just wanted to say hello to the real Sam Prentice. He is in the house today. We had a fun time with him last week on another stream, and it was a lot of fun. I got to say so. So John Isaacson, good afternoon, gentlemen. I have an Ender 3 Pro and enjoy it. Never have had problem till now with leveling. When I start a printing after leveling, the nozzle starts high of the bed. So what's happening there? It sounds like your offset has been lost, and that can happen due to a couple of things. One is brownouts, because brownouts, we don't see them normally, but they can affect electronics and they can screw things up. So that's something to be aware of. I would just go in and double check and see what your offset is. And if your offset is working correctly, then or is set correctly to what it was before, then there's something else probably going wrong there.
Yeah, those wheels will start to unscrew themselves over time, especially if your tension wasn't high off the bat. And the reason is just naturally the design of a screw. I mean, if you have a downward force on a screw, if it overcomes the surface tension between the spring and the screw, it's going to start rotating in an attempt to relieve the spring. That's the nature of it, right? So I've been seeing a lot of videos this week talking about people putting these silicone spacers in there. Now, I don't have access to those currently, but it's not that bad of an idea if you have a BLTouch or an ABL sensor. If you are still just doing hand leveling, what you're going to find in a lot of cases is that you will have a micro... No two springs will be the same height in reality at the end of the day. So you're going to have to check them once in a while. And, you know, usually if your first layer is having issues, then yeah, that's a good time to just slow down, re-level your bed. We do recommend that you preheat your bed within, you know, so you don't burn yourself. I know some people are sensitive to 60 degrees. So get up to like 40, 45 degrees just to see if there's any deviations in the bed. And you level to that. You don't level to a cold bed. And
yeah, you always want to level to a hot bed.
And at the end of the day, you know what, a manual bed leveling, if you're going to the extreme, will take upwards of 5 minutes.
That's true.
And if you know, and I can't think of any time where that 5 minutes is not worth it.
All right, Ben has got an issue. He says, not exactly true, Brian. If you've recompiled Marlin on the machine with a larger bed like the CR-10S V, and you haven't adjusted your thermal runaway watch time or temperature, you'll get thermal runaway. Yes, you will, but typically what will happen is that should already be engaged, Ben, so that should not be an issue.
I'm going to pull up the parameters here because, this is a common question that comes up a lot. And I think it's not really warranting a whole video. So if you guys just want a brief breakdown here, I'm just going to find the section. Where is it here? Okay. So pardon me while I bring up my code. Where are we hiding here? There we go. Okay. So in configuration advanced.h, assuming you've enabled your thermal protection on your config H, there are override parameters, and you have to understand what each of these are. So if we take a look at thermal protection hot ends, and the bed will be the same sort of settings, we've got a protection period, and we've got a hysteresis. And what it's saying is basically once it reaches the target for this setting, it starts observing. If the temperature stays too far below the target for too long of a period, the firmware will halt the machine to a safety precaution. So under this setting right here, if we have a period of 40 with a hysteresis of 4, it says, let's say you set your hot end to 210 degrees, and when the hot end turns off, it drips down to, like, let's say 200. Now that's below the 4 degrees differential. And so what it does, it starts an internal timer for 40 seconds. Now, after 40 seconds, if you are not within 4 degrees of your set point, it's going to thermal runaway. And it's going to say thermal runaway hot end because it couldn't reach that temperature. So that's one type of thermal protection you have in here. If you're finding, really you should never have to touch this one, because if you PID tune your printer accordingly, you'll always stay within plus or minus 1 degree of that set point. If you find that your temperature, a lot of people see it when they do Octoprint, but not so much when they're doing it in person. If you see that temperature bouncing plus or minus 2 degrees, plus or minus 3 degrees, then you need to do a PID tune to get that tuned in so it's not oscillating. Now, if we go down to the second type of thermal runaway protection here, we can see what it says is anytime we said an M104, 109, M303, whenever you tell it to get to a certain temperature, so when you start up your printer and it's at 20 degrees in the bedroom, you set your temperature to 210, it starts to rise. So during that rising period, it has another watch which says over a time period, it has to change X degrees. And this is where most people's thermal runaways happen, such as Ben's scenario, which is where it's trying to get up to temp, but it's not able to increase the X rate. And in industrial control, we call this rate of rise. So what this is saying here is over a 20-second period, I need to see it increase by 2 degrees from whatever it was previously. If we are not increasing by 2 degrees in 20 seconds, we get a thermal runaway. Something is going wrong. And this also applies, again, to the bed. This is where most of the thermal runaways I see come from. So it says down here the exact same settings. We have that hysteresis where once it reaches its regulating temperature, it has 20 seconds at any time to get within 2 degrees of your temperature set point to hold it there, or it has a problem. The one below it, the watch bed temp period increase here, we can see every minute your bed needs to rise by 2 degrees. Now, on the lowest temperature ranges, like 20, 30 degrees, you're going to see that increase heavily. But as with a big bed, when it has to start increasing the temperature difference to a larger amount versus the ambient air of your room, you need to overcome that heat kind of seeping away from your bed as it's heating up. So when you get into that 45, 50 degree range, you may find that it takes, over 1 minute to rise even 1 degree. And so, this is, just be smart about this. You always have to try it out. But I found on like the 10S V, I've had to set this to say 2 minutes to rise 1 degree. And the reason I say be careful about this is because in theory, let's say if we change this to 600 seconds, so that's about 10 minutes. It has 10 minutes to rise 2 degrees. Now, while it's watching for that, let's say you're having a true thermal runaway where your heating element has somehow fallen off the bed and is heating at its own rate. Well, it can freely heat to whatever it wants to for the next 10 minutes before it says, hey, the bed is not changing temperature, shut it down. And so that's where your inherent fire risks are, because if you basically, if you were to set this to some kind of infinite value, let's say 6,000 seconds, and you are running a, that's equivalent to having a natural thermal runaway, and chances are it would actually fully combust before the protection would kick in. So these numbers are set rather conservatively from Marlin for that reason, is to protect you. And if you see that, it is a warning to protect you, not to get in your way. So again, you may need to tweak these numbers a little bit with each machine. Most of these have been proven with the presets that Marlin have made available. They've been proven against that one machine. However, every person's machine is different. So we'll talk a bit more about these in the future there, but that's where you can tune your thermal runaway. It's not just an on-off feature. Pardon me. It does have parameters you can work with. So sorry for the boring Marlin lesson on day, but it is a very important area to understand.
And there you go. All right. So far there's no more questions. So let's just talk about some stuff that we got coming up in the meantime. By all means, put your questions in the chat, and we will get to them as soon as we can. The super chat is turned on. The super chat button's not working, so we have to do it all manually, but that's okay. Then you get to hear my sexy voice.
Oh, yeah.
Henry Stofferhand says, hey, Richard, are you still planning on doing the upgrade for your CR-10 with the Mini E3? And is it that the V2? Yes, I am. I'm just waiting on the parts to come from Big Tree. They were supposed to have shipped them out already, Henry. So as soon as I get them, I will be putting together a video for that and testing it all, and then showing you guys exactly what I did. Because my tired old CR-10 really needs to have an upgrade. It's still an 8-bit machine with a 12-volt power supply, and I really think it needs to be boosted to a 24-volt. We're going to totally strip that thing down, and it's going to be over a couple of episodes as we go ahead and do that one.
Just so you guys know, I mean, 24 volt is nice, but it is a major conversion. So you gotta weigh your pros and cons. The machine behind me that is running an SKR over here, that is still on 12 volts. Going to 24 is not a necessity. It's just a nice to have, because the biggest thing is when you swap out your bed, it's a preheat of about 2 to 3 minutes versus 6 to 10 to upwards of 15 I've seen on like the 10S5, for instance.
So there's a question here from SDM Productions. Jerry, do you want to bring that one up? There we go. He says, I have a question. I have an Ender 3 Pro. I keep getting a bulge of plastic all the way around the print in the middle, even after I level the bed. When you say a bulge of plastic, is that like a ball of plastic that's sitting there? Because if it is, you may have a high spot in your bed, especially if you're printing in the middle. So it's not grabbing. Basically what's happened, you've leveled to the corners, but you haven't leveled in the center. And if you've got a bulge in the center, it's going to translate up through whatever build plate that you're using, except for glass in most cases. But what you can do to alleviate that is take some Kapton tape, which is an orange cellophane style tape, a high heat tape, and go around the outside of the build platter. Just lay down a strip all the way around, and that should bring up the outer edge enough to give you a much more level bed, and that will also require you to re-level that bed as well.
Now, on for those members who are infill and higher, you may have seen a video recently I covered on some easy tips to also help with that first layer adhesion and bubbles. And one of the things we didn't talk about in that video, and I'll show it to you here, is my technique for bed adhesion on that first layer. So just popping over into PrusaSlicer here, you can see I've got a layer height and I've got a first layer height. Now, I've got a very fine detail on my actual layer height, layer to layer, but for my first layer, I actually went up to something a little bit higher, because the first layer is always going to have a little bit of, you know, it's not going to be as buffed as the rest of the print sometimes, especially if you have a textured bed or you have a hurdle. If you set it to something higher, I wouldn't recommend going much higher than 0.28 on a 0.4 nozzle. You can do 0.32, but then you're dealing with different bed adhesion issues. But if you bump up that first layer height in any of your slicers, just something that's a bit more coarse, it's going to help the movement around absorb some of those micro deviations on your first layer and almost turn your first layer into a bit of a fake raft. It won't overcome a major bump, and a major bump, I would say, is you can visibly see the nozzle getting closer to the bed as it moves around. But if you have a bump that it's just, 0.2, you're nice and squished, and then you go over a bump and then you smear your nozzle against the bed, increasing this is going to increase the line width theoretically as well, but it also increases the amount of material that comes out of your nozzles. So it creates a more coarse first layer, but it does help absorb those micro deviations. Give it a try sometime and see if that helps out when you have bumps that you just simply can't fix mechanically without replacing the bed.
There you go. Accord XTC. I love that Accord XTC. That's kind of cool. I've been enjoying printing on my Ender 3 and noticed some light dust on some of the rollers. Is this normal, or is this a sign that the rollers are too tight? Well, it is normal, and over time it is going to happen. Those rollers are going to wear over time, and when they do, of course, you're going to have to readjust. But don't over adjust, because if you over adjust, you're just going to compress those wheels into the track, and if you do that, you're just going to wear down a little nub that's going to be running in the track, and it won't be very effective. So the other thing that you can go with is replacing those black rubber wheels with polycarbonate wheels, which will last you a lot longer, and they won't wear nearly as fast as the black rubber ones do.
And you will still get that material on there. It's just going to happen, and you can just wipe it off with a piece of paper towel or something. I haven't personally found the need to lubricate my 2020 ever, because the rolling is pretty seamless. You got to remember, you don't want the wheels to be clamped on there. You're not trying to pinch something to hold it in there. You're trying to go and use the V-slot wheels with your V-slot aluminum to give it a little bit of rigidity and wiggle room. And obviously the long-term solution is to get rid of those wheels and go to a proper linear bearing for motion. But for these cheap machines, it does the job, and it's accurate enough.
That's right.
We've done a lot of play with linear rails and all that stuff. It's an expensive upgrade, and there can be a lot of little issues that arise with it. So you got to be smart about it. The wheels, the polycarbonates, the only thing I would say is that it will reveal if you have issues with your machine, because since they don't wear and since they don't have any rubber flex, if you overpinch it, you're going to start to see those firm issues if you have, let's say, a deformed 2020 extrusion, or you have your eccentric nut too tight or too loose. It is great, but honestly, most users, I would say you wouldn't have to worry about it. The wheels will, chances are, outlast your machine, even the rubber ones, I find.
All right, AHR1, he says, what silent board would you recommend for an Ender CR-10 S5? Well, that's not an Ender, that's a CR-10 category. But again, I would probably recommend, if you're going to move up, I would move up to an SKR motherboard, because they are 32-bit. And most of them will fit inside the case of the CR-10 box, the side box.
The E3, the E3, or
any
the E3 boards are fine.
Yeah. All the E3 boards will be just fine.
Yeah, the SKR, like the 1.3, 1.4, will require retrofitting of your box. And so we don't usually advise that. Now, this one here, I'm just going to share this because I haven't got my fingers on this one yet. Bear with me. I resized my screen, and then everything got all messed up for everyone here. Let's just work with that. All right, so this one was just recently released by Big Tree Tech, and I haven't had a chance to review this one yet. This is the Ender 3 CR-10, the new version of the E3 Mini, called the E3 Turbo. And my understanding is it drops, again, right in place with where your Ender or CR-10 board is. But the big thing for a lot of folks, number one, you've got dedicated headers for Z-Probe, for NeoPixels. It supports, it's actually got 5 steppers on it, so you can do dual extruders in the future. And they put 2 headers on for your Z. Now, I believe they did this on the 2.0 board as well. But for those of you who don't know, the CR-10s, most of them have dual Z. And usually when you do this upgrade, you would have to buy yourself a motor splitter and hook it up because there was only one Z connection. So this one makes it much easier to hook up everything. It looks like it's spec'd really well. It's got good parts on there, and it's nice and small, and it's a drop-in replacement. I'm hoping to get my hands on one soon. The only caveat with a board like this, which they never ever document for whatever reason, is you'll notice down on the bottom right here, it's got a 10-pin header. It's a 2x5 connector. This is for your LCD, and it only has one cable, and that's because the Enders only use one cable. That doesn't mean it's not incompatible with your CR10, but it might be. So take a look at your CR10's display and look at the back. It's got 3 connectors on there, usually EXP1, 2, and 3. Now, on the earlier CR10s, they didn't solder EXP3, and that's what this connects to, is EXP3. So if you don't have that soldered, you might have to get a new screen or get someone to solder on a new header for you. Otherwise, it looks like a great board, honestly, and I think it's 2209s, so they got more than enough power. They're silent. You've got all the cooling built in already. It's got its jumpers for a couple different things. It's just not upgradable like the Dip for replacing your steppers, but it looks like a good board. I just haven't got my hand on one yet, so hopefully soon, eventually.
All right. So Henry's asking, so do I need a new power supply right now? I have a CR-10S. No, you don't need a new power supply.
No.
What we're going to do on our upgrade is go ahead and you can do it on the 12-volt power supply if you want to go to 24 volts. I also saw a comment in there about having to change fans and thermistors and all, or heater cartridges and all that. That is part of it. When you move to 24 volts, you have a lot to change. Fans have to be changed to 24 volt fans or you'll burn them out. You'll also have to change the heater cartridge to a 24 volt heater cartridge. So those are just some of the things to keep in mind. You'll have to change the bed. So you'll have to buy a 24 volt bed if you want to go to 24 volt upgrade. Now,
honestly, it's about a $250 cost, honestly, to start with, just when you consider all the little components and stuff. So that's why we say, it's a nice upgrade for future compatibility, but man, you're basically rebuilding most of the machine.
That's right. So at the end of the day, you can do it on a 12 volt. So you don't have to upgrade your power supply at all. If you want to, you can go ahead and upgrade to a Meanwell, because most of those older 3D printers from Creality, they had 12 volt power supplies. I'm not sure if the 5 came with a 12 volt or did it come with 24 volt?
No. Only the Ender series switched to 24 volt.
Ah, gotcha.
From my experience, every CR10 I have seen has been 12 volt.
The newer ones are all 24 volts.
Okay, yeah. So when
the version 2s are all 24 volts.
So basically, if you have if you have a box underneath your printer, then it's a fair chance that it's a 24 volt. If you have a separate control box, which is notably in the CR-10S4, 10S5, and the CR-10s before version 2, those I'm pretty sure are all 12 volts. I've never seen one that was a 24.
There you go.
What you got to watch for, and I found this with one of my buddies' CR-10 S5s we had brought in, is there's also different generations. So you got to look within that control box, because the one he had this special ribbon connector that went over to the LCD instead of the standard 5x2 row headers. So you just got to check it out. Again, that's why I say don't even waste your time with doing 24 volt conversions on those big machines. But if you're going that route, I mean, you're already knee deep, couple $100. So
yeah, easily. So Jerry's got another question, I think, there. Yes, no, maybe. There we go.
Maybe so.
Helge Johnson. Well, that's an interesting name. Beds, fans, nozzle, heater, power supply, 24 volt, maybe some wiring to get a printer to 24 volt. Am I missing something here? No, you're not missing anything. You are going to have to replace the bed. You are going to have to replace the fans. You are going to have to replace the heater cartridge if you are moving to 24 volts. And that's what we've been discussing.
Basically, if you want, it's actually easier to summarize what you won't have to replace. You will not have to replace your motors. You will not have to replace the frame, and you will not have to replace your heater block unless your old cartridges were welded in, and which is a very common thing, believe it or not.
That's
where
true.
You can't get them out after the fact. So you might even have to buy a whole new hot end. Really, and this is what comes down to salvaging of old printers there is, you can salvage the motors, you can salvage the frame, anything past that, unless it matches your voltage requirements. Oh, and your end stops, of course. End stops, BLTouch. There's a separate subsystem on all these boards that convert down to 5 volt and 3.3 volt circuits. And all of that equipment is cross-compatible on the 12 and 24 volt systems. But any power components, that's what we'll call it there. So your heater, your cartridges and all that, they're not going to be compatible. And especially when going 12 to 24, we've seen people smoke out their machines because you're throwing double the rate of the current, basically.
All right. What do we got next, Jerry?
Brian.
Yeah. Hi, Alteracious. Hi. Yeah, it's I didn't get a chance to touch it this week. For those of you who want to know the inner workings of what's been going on here, so I was intending on publishing a video on Muso Black, but the manufacturers have been terrible responding to me on questions, and from what I'm gathering, I think it's mostly camera tricks. So I don't want to lead you on the wrong way there, but I've shown a couple of prints here before that I painted in Muso Black. And then right now outside it's minus 25 something other here.
That's a different question that he's asking.
Getting colder and colder, but I haven't had a chance to do any more painting in the past few days. So I'm really hoping that it warms up soon so we can do some painting.
I sent it.
Well, it didn't come up.
All right, let's pull up James's question here.
There we go.
Yes.
Question for Brian.
So let's take a look at this number here, 337-3107. Thank you for actually posting that number, because for those of you who don't know, Thingiverse's search is just incredible lately for actual anything named. Bringing this up, the Ender 3 direct drive, right? Yeah, there's a couple different adapters here. Now, it doesn't line up with the hot end. I have a CR-10S. Now, James, do you have a modified extruder assembly by chance? What I have found, there was a couple different mounts where they were crashing into the frame when homing. And so I just got to check. I got to look into that specific one here that I linked. Let's see if I can pull it up on the screen for you guys here. Gotta love my prep skills here. Ender 3 direct drive. So if we take a look at the photos here, yeah, this is the one I've got running downstairs on my Ender 3 Pro still. So this one, all it is a 3D mount that basically turns the hot end sideways. And I'll see if we can actually, there should be some more makes in here. Maybe someone with a better angle here. Ender 3s. For those of you who don't know, the Ender 3 and the CR-10S have essentially the same hot end design. And the way this one worked here is that your stock extruder here has to clamp in and sit in between the brackets, and then the nozzles are supposed to both line up where you put a little piece of Bowden tube in between them. So in the case of this question here, I'm just sorry, I got too many windows open, guys. Bringing up the chat, bring it on over. So it doesn't line up with the hot end. I'd like to, maybe James, if you can send us an email at questions at the first layer with a photo of how it's lining up there, because that one should line up properly with any stock Creality extruder hot end. I just want to see what looks different with yours. I can't guarantee it's going to work with every single one, but it really should, given that this the hot end design for all of these Creality products up until the most recent V6 modifications and all that, they're all the same with that layout style. So yeah, maybe Richard, you can pull up our card and talk a bit about our magic, if you will. Our
no way, nobody wants to see that.
No. Nobody emails us. We only got 2 emails this week, you guys. You're slacking off.
Yeah, you're slacking off, you guys.
Yeah, that we're doing something right and your printer's working.
If you are wanting to get your question answered on the show and you want to send it to us ahead of time, that's usually a good choice because we have time to research it if there is a question that we don't have an immediate answer for. You can send them to questions@thefirstlayer.com. I check that email every day, and we do put them into a document that Brian and I share throughout the week. So questions@thefirstlayer.com. You can always send your questions there.
Awesome. Yeah.
There we go. So hi there. I've been struggling with my BLTouch. I have it defined and followed your tutorial. However, it is not being recognized when I flash to my board. I have an Ender 3 with a V427.
Yeah, that's that new Creality board.
Yes.
Silent board, yeah.
Yeah.
Because their numbering scheme makes absolute sense, doesn't it?
Not at all.
Let me see if I can find a photo of these things. I haven't. Truth be told, I've replaced everything with big tree boards, so I don't actually ever look at it anymore. So what people have to understand with the BLTouch is that the BLTouch has 5 wires, and every manufacturer usually gets it wrong when they design their board in the order of which those pins actually correspond to. And, every board's different, and I don't want to go and mislead someone and have them hook it in backwards. However, you should have a 3-pin connector and a 2-pin connector. The 2-pin connector with the white and black cable is designed to go to your end stops, and usually it's the white cable goes to the last connection on that socket. And I'll try and see if maybe I can get some photos for you guys on our Facebook group there. Now, the 3-wire one, that's the yellow, red, and brown, those wires correspond to a power, a ground, and then the servo output from your board to drop the pin and pull it back in. And that's usually its own separate header, and that's usually where I find they wrote it wrong. So you need to look at your board's schematic if you can get it. Most manufacturers are putting all their schematics on GitHub, and just check the order of the wires and make sure they line up with your BLTouch colors. Now, if you have one of those Creality BLTouches, or you have a 3D Touch, or any of the other ones that use a different coloring scheme, I'm sorry you're kind of on your own right now for that one. I don't have an exact color matching profile for that. But if you are buying the authentic one from Paris that has those 5 colors I mentioned, then it should be fairly straightforward. What I've found many times is you hook up the BLTouch, you go to probe, and the moment the probe deploys, the printer resets. Or the probe deploys and it goes down and it crashes into the bed even though it mounts back inside the container. It's usually a result of the wires not lining up with your board's specific I/O layout.
Okay, we got time for a couple more questions. The first one is from Marissa Silver. She says, this is a really basic question, but I've got a mirror glass bed. What's the recommended way to clean it? There's no glue or anything on it, just a few prints that she's done. And there are fingerprints. Well, the easiest and simplest way to do that is spray some Windex onto a cloth and then just clean the top of it. That's all you really have to do. You don't have to do anything more than that. If you are going to use glue stick, then if it builds up over time, you'll want to take it to the sink, wash it in warm water. That will release all of the glue stick from the glass. It doesn't matter if you've got a mirror bed or you've got a glass bed. Same idea. And there you go. It's a pretty simple and quick fix. So yeah, just a little bit of Windex onto a cloth. Don't spray it directly onto the mirror if it's on your bed, because you can cause electrical issues. So I would just spray it on the cloth and just clean the top, just like you would if you were dusting.
Yeah, bear in mind, I mean, the best way I kind of always say it is treat your bed like your dishes. Don't treat it like your kitchen window. So, with a kitchen window, for instance, you can have dust in the air. You can have any particulates like water vapor particulates that just so happen to settle there. We could go into the boring things about temperature dynamics and why things seek windows. But, if you do a quick window clean, usually it looks clean enough, it looks clear enough, and you're looking through it. But when you need something to adhere to it, you have to think of it like your kitchen dishes, right? If you go and let's say you take your dish and you've cooked a meal and then you run it under the sink and just wipe it till it's clean. Is it really clean? No. So when it comes to glass, when we're talking about fingerprints, that's grease. So it doesn't hurt, if you can detach your bed and you do it safely so you don't cut yourself, take it to your sink, run it under warm water with a good soap like Dawn, and degrease that surface, because that's what's going to cause your smearing and your lack of bed adhesion is your filament. If you were to zoom in and watch it, imagine you're pouring hot plastic onto a greasy surface. The grease will bubble and will probably potentially even boil, and it's going to cause that filament to move away from the surface while it's cooling, and it's never going to adhere, so it's just going to smear itself back on the nozzle. A clean bed surface is our number one key to a good first layer.
Absolutely. Any experience with closed loop systems? Will this work with sensorless homing? I'm not sure what you mean by a closed loop system.
He's referring to the S42B from Big Tree Tech, the closed loop steppers, where it's where it goes and tries to turn it into an effective servo. It will work. It's just a matter that really the microscopic differences won't make that much of a difference. My biggest challenge with that board, honestly, was number one, it is not PID tuned for a heavier bed. So if you start putting it on your Y-axis, things go really bad really quickly. Now for your extruder, yeah, sure, it works fine. And maybe for a smaller printer, it works great. But the default cables they come with are kind of enough to cover an Ender 3. It's pushing it for a CR-10, especially if you have a separate control box. You need to build your own cables if you want it to go longer. Are they worth it? Yeah, I guess. The problem is the whole purpose of it was if the printer gets whacked out of place while it's printing, that it will know and go back to that point. Or if it's on the extruder, it will make sure that it doesn't lose its position. However, if you're having things where your extruder is bouncing back that needs to compensate on, you got a clog, and nothing's going to fix that apart from unclogging your machine. Same thing with the axis. If you're hitting your axis and it moves and it needs to bounce back to position, well, it shouldn't be moving like that. And if you're worried about layer shifts, you need to maybe look at your motor VREF and make sure there's no extra resistance in there. It does make some prints easier, but at the same time, it's going to try to mask issues that you probably should fix.
And that is pretty much it in a nutshell. I have nothing to add to that, so I'm not going to.
I know.
Hey, there's
I
3D
ramble
Printing and Painting. Our good friend Jerry Knapp, he says, "Hello, Richard and Brian. I love your shows. We love your shows as well."
We got the official dog of the first layer here.
There we go.
Hey, Roscoe. Hey,
there
buddy.
we go. So with our last 4 minutes left, do we have any more questions there, Jerry? Oh, okay. Asked a question a while back, but haven't found them answering. But they might also not have, and I don't know either way. This is from Dana LaBerge.
Dana, just go ahead and ask your question again, right?
Yeah, ask it again.
Here. Sorry. Truth be told, I've got my chat window off screen, and I do try to keep my eye on the camera here, but I've also got Richard over here. So my apologies if I miss a question here or there. But, we do want to answer your questions. So, yeah, let us know here, and we will jump on it right away.
I see that Pure Life RC01 TJ, he has rolled over to the 2-month badge. You'll notice that Pure Life in the chat has now a different colored badge. It is blue, so it means that he's been a member of our members group down in the first layer here on YouTube, and he's been there for 2 months. And he says, smash that like button. That's right. Go ahead, smash that like button. If you are new here, it would be great if you hit the subscribe button. Also, and ding that little bell so you get notified every time that we drop a brand new episode or we go live. And speaking of going live, before we answer this question, for our members, we are going to be doing another live stream on Wednesday night. That will just be for our members. We'll be using StreamYard, and that will allow you to we'll have a group discussion on Wednesday night, and that is available for our infill and above members. So you guys will get a chance to sit and pick my brain. Brian may or may not be with us on Wednesday night. I never book him for that, but
you know what? I think I'm not on call until the following week, so I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, so maybe Brian will be with us too. So Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are going to go live for our members, infill and above, and we will have a group discussion. So I'll be posting that later in the next day or two.
So all right. To answer Dana's question before we jump on John's question here, yes, if you asked it a couple months ago, yeah, it's unfortunately. When these things move very fast, unfortunately, things do get lost in the stream. So that's why we do say, follow up with us at questions at the first layer if there is something that didn't get addressed in the show.
Yeah.
Just because, we're not some professional YouTubers here. We're just two guys with a couple of chat windows up, and we're putting Richard's wife to work here, trying to moderate for us. It's kind of chaotic.
So John Powell is asking, my bed seems to have a noticeable slope on the X-axis and slightly less on the Y. It's proving to be a challenge to get it level. Any thoughts? First and foremost, I would make sure that your X gantry is level or square to the frame, pardon me. and then tram the tool head to the bed. That usually would be the best way to go. That is something that I do all the time. I always make sure that my X gantry is square to my frame, and then I go ahead and tram the tool head, which in this case would be the hot end, to the bed. And there's a great little tool that we talked about recently on getting a perfectly level bed. If you're a member at the infill or above, there is a video there available for you to dial in that bed just perfectly.
Absolutely. So, if you want to bump your way up like Accord XTC here, welcome to the infill level. You're gonna get in on those chats and all those little tips. We do put out a video Tuesday tip every week. That's just a little less. I'm going to say a little less scripted in the most part, but it gives you a little bit of info to jump ahead on your 3D prints. And it's good for little videos that number one, YouTube metrics are kind of stupid, just so you know. So if we drop a video that's 3 minutes, it actually impacts the next video that might be 20 minutes. I don't know why, but it's beyond my expertise. But if you join in there, you're going to get a little bit of extra content. We're going to eventually compile it all into one big old tip video that everyone can check out there. But we do like to give back to the people who are putting in just that little extra effort to support the channel and help us out during these fun times.
Okay, James has got one quick. Oh, I missed the James one.
Sorry. Here we go.
He says, fixed it with your help. I did change the extruder and it is different. I forgot I changed that. Okay. Well, that helps. And Jerry's got another one.
While she brings it in, thank you for the help. I'm just going to show something with you guys here because this is the kind of things that we would normally cover on a Tuesday tip. But I've been having a lot of trouble with those dual gear extruders that I swore by. I loved them. And what I've noticed actually now is it's pretty much a guaranteed failure. So I've got in front of me the part of the extruder assembly, and we'll see if it gets macro close enough there. You can actually see the gear has etched away at the bottom. And this is because the spring tension here is far too high. So I actually cut the spring just to see if I could reduce the tension and reduce the wear. But what happened, and actually I think, no, I can't unscrew it right now, but this little screw here, if you take this gear off, before it starts wearing away on that, and let's focus on that, this gear, the threads are actually starting to go. And so what happens is this bows outwards and then begins to etch away at its tiny little aluminum surface there. And it will still technically work, but you're going to start getting weird print imperfections. And I think if I can pull this up, we'll see can you see all that weird banding occurring kind of around here? That is all a result of that gear failing. So even though it works, it's not working in its best shape. And luckily with this gorgeous matter 3D filament here, you can actually see right through and see those issues. So I went back this week and I ordered a boatload of the classic metal versions of the Creality ones, and you know what, they work great, guys. So if you are looking at replacing your extruder assembly, there's no reason not to go with these. Now, the reason I went away from these originally was because I thought I was getting filament slipping and all that stuff. Well, guess what? It's because I didn't assemble my hot end properly. And so this does a great job at masking the fact that you didn't assemble your hot end properly because it's got way more torque than what's required to normally push that filament through. So don't go buying the dual gear to solve a problem with one of these. Make sure your filament can move easily through your assembly.
Now,
that's my final word for Sunday.
Before we sign off, I want to recognize Snapshot FPV, Skip Tarrant, Roberta Humberstone, Nas Masalama, and Accord XTC. These are our newest members to our members area. And we had Accord XTC and Robert 954 upgrade their memberships today. We do appreciate that, and thank you very much. And like I said, we are going to be putting out this live stream on Wednesday just for you people that are in the, or you members that are in the infill or above. And we will hang out with you and we'll talk. And Brian's been working on the Discord. We're trying to get everybody out an invite so we can get that all sorted out. And that should be up and running. Next Sunday, we are going to have a live guest here in the studio. at my place. So Brian will be coming in the way he always does. And it is Amon Baines from Matter 3D. He is going to be coming in and talking about the filament that we reviewed recently. And they are still working on their website. So just be patient. It is coming. And I have been in contact with Amon over at Matter 3D. I actually speak to him about 2 or 3 times a week as it is right now. And for those guys that are waiting for some of that to test, I will be getting your information from you very soon so that we can get your addresses to Amon and we can get you guys out some of that filament. All right.
Absolutely.
With that,
the support outstanding for that filament, guys. We've all been shocked to see how interested you guys are in this, and so everything's ramping up really quick there. I'm actually a little worried because I'm just about out of my roll of clear, and so I'm wondering how I'm going to order a new one soon. I will be sure to let you know as soon as that website is live and you are ready to order the stuff.
So this is their black PLA. Look how gorgeous that is.
And that's that's the glossy or the
it's got a bit of a gloss finish to it. A semi-gloss. I would say semi-gloss.
So I've got I don't have it here on my desk anymore right now, but they have oh no, I do have it right here. So this here is their, and I've broken off pieces because I was doing bad experiments, but this is the matte black ABS. It is gorgeous. And just for comparison, those darker points, those were painted with Muso Black. So it's actually a very black, in person, it's actually quite a dark black, but it's clean. You know, it came out, and this was off my Ender 3. So our infill members, go back and watch the back catalog. I did a video on printing ABS on an Ender 3, and I'm sure you're going to love it.
Henry Stofferman, how do I upgrade to the top layer? All you have to do is just go into the member section. You're already a member, and you can just hit the top layer, and it will upgrade you automatically.
You can always jump around on those. We do leave them open for that sake. So, however you want to support us, even just joining us today, and throw us a like, leave a comment in the video below afterwards. There, it helps us with our metrics, and you don't have to be a paying member, but we do definitely appreciate that extra little bit of support. It helps us buy materials for the show and produce the content for you guys. So thank you everybody for all the levels of help you've been able to provide during this tough time.
And we do appreciate you showing up today. We had a total of 83 people at one point, and that goes a long way to help our metrics.
One of our records, actually.
Yeah. Leave a comment after the stream is over down in the comment section. If you got some value out of today, we do appreciate you doing that. And hit that like button. If you were new here, go ahead, hit that subscribe button so that you get notified every time that we put up a brand new episode. Until we see you on Saturday, well, our members on Wednesday, but until we see everybody else on Saturday, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.